Ladies and gentlemen, something shocking happened. Not out there, but in here. It was not a breaking news headline. It was not a prophecy spoken by lips of clay. It was a vision, and it came not through the senses, but through the silence behind the senses. It came not from the world, but from God, and not the God that floats above the clouds, but the God that is your own awareness. The vision was within me. It did not come through the clamor of the world, nor did it arrive dressed in thunder or wrapped in spectacle. It rose quietly, unannounced, in the sacred stillness of my own awareness. That is where everything begins, not in the headlines, not in the judgments of others, but in the unseen realm of consciousness. It is in that silent space behind the eyes, where thought takes shape and belief breathes life into form, that the true drama of life unfolds. I had grown accustomed to looking outward for signs, for confirmation, for truth. But this time there was no external trigger, no breaking moment that could be pointed to. There was only the unmistakable knowing that something had shifted deep within me, and that this shift would echo into the world I call reality. What I saw was not with the eyes of flesh. It was not a dream in the ordinary sense. It was a seeing beyond seeing, a vision more vivid than the day, more substantial than matter itself. In this vision a figure stood, a man of power, or so it had seemed for so long. He was elevated in my mind, placed on a pedestal built, not of stone, but of sustained attention and unconscious agreement. He had been given power by my belief in his authority, by my quiet, persistent assumption that he stood above me. Yet in the stillness of that inner experience, I saw him fade, not fall violently, not be struck down, but simply, fade, his presence weakened, his stature collapsed into the nothingness from which it came. I watched as what once held sway dissolved like mist in morning light. There was no resistance in me, no fear, just clarity, a recognition. I was not watching a man lose his position. I was watching a belief depart my mind. The figure was not just a person. He was the embodiment of a concept I had once accepted. And in the moment I no longer believed in that concept, the person lost his footing, not in the world, not yet, but in the only place that mattered my consciousness And that is where all power resides. That is where every throne is built, and every chain is forged. The world is not moved by politics, or armies, or titles. It is moved by the quiet imaginations of men and women who do not yet know what they are doing. We think we are reacting to the world. We are not. We are creating it, moment by moment, assumption by assumption. What I saw was proof of this. The shocking removal was not a future prophecy. It was a present unveiling of truth. The veil had lifted, and what remained was nothing but the awareness that I had been the power all along. The vision was not something I received. It was something I became aware I had always been creating God revealed the change not through a voice that thundered from the heavens, nor by signs in the sky, but through a vivid inner experience, quiet, profound, and undeniable. It did not announce itself in language, yet it spoke louder than any words could. This was not the God of ancient stories with a distant throne and thunderbolt in hand, but the God I had come to recognize as the I Am, within the eternal awareness that quietly declares, I exist, long before the mind adds names, stories, or identity. In this sacred moment of inward clarity, something unfolded with both subtlety and force. I found myself in a place that was not physical, yet more real than the world around me. There was no need for interpretation, for I knew, without analysis, without effort, exactly what was happening. I was being shown a symbolic unraveling, a figure long upheld in my inner world as powerful, dominant, unshakable, was being revealed in a new light. His presence had once felt fixed, even inevitable, the way monuments seem permanent to the child who sees them for the first time. But now, before my inner eye, that monument was crumbling, not by violence, but by revelation. This was not a judgment or punishment. It was a shift in perception, and that made all the difference. I was not told that this man would lose his power. I saw that he already had. Or more precisely, I saw that his power had always been imagined, borrowed from my own conviction, propped up by collective belief, held together by nothing more than assumption and inertia. The collapse I witnessed was not the fall of a person, but the fall of an idea. And it was God who unveiled it, not as an external being intervening in the affairs of men, but as the awareness within me that suddenly said, "Look, see." It was not new information. It was a lifting of the veil. I had known, somewhere deep within, that the world reflects inner belief, but in that moment I felt it with the weight of direct experience. The revelation did not come to inform me of something to come, but to awaken me to what was already true. That power lies in awareness, and that nothing in the world can remain if it is no longer imagined into being. This experience was intimate and unmistakably divine. It was not about politics or the removal of one leader. It was about the deeper truth that all external dominion is secondary to the dominion of consciousness. God, the I Am, had not acted on the world. He had acted within me. He had revealed that the world only echoes what is sustained in the soul, and when the soul withdraws its light, the image projected into the world must fade. The fall was not a prophecy. It was a recognition of what no longer held life in me. The change had already occurred. God had revealed it by revealing me to myself. Imagination is the true prophet. It does not predict what might come. It declares what must come, because it has already been born in the unseen. Long before anything is visible to the eye or audible to the ear, it is conceived and shaped in the silence of imagination. The world rushes to call imagination a fantasy, a child's indulgence, a retreat from reality, but that is only because the world has forgotten that imagination is reality, only in seed form. It is the blueprint, the mold, the cause. What I imagined with deep feeling did not remain hidden. It rose like steam from the inner furnace of my consciousness and took shape in the material world. I did not need to force it. I simply needed to imagine it vividly and persistently, and the outer world obeyed like a shadow follows the form. There was a time when I, too, believed that imagination was lesser than action, that to dream was to delay, that only the physical mattered. But life, in its quiet persistence, showed me otherwise. Every significant shift I've seen, every rise and every fall, began not with a strategy, but with a silent picture in the mind. I would feel something before I saw it. I would inwardly hear a voice, or see a scene, or catch a glimpse of something intangible, and then, in time, it would show up in the so-called real world with uncanny accuracy. It was never coincidence. It was prophecy, not from a mystical oracle, but from the divine center within me that speaks in symbols and emotion. The most startling moments of my life were not those in which something unexpected happened, but those in which something I had imagined with intensity appeared exactly as I had seen it. There is a strange kind of awe in realizing that your inner world has spoken first, and the outer only echoes. That is the role imagination plays. It speaks first. It declares, "This is who I am," and the world must conform. Not immediately, not always loudly, but always faithfully. Feeling is the key. Imagination clothed in feeling becomes destiny. Thought alone is weak. But thought infused with belief, with conviction, with asterisk feeling asterisk, has the power to shape mountains. I imagined him falling, not out of hatred or bitterness, but out of clarity. I saw him not as a man, but as a symbol of fear, of control, of misplaced power. I no longer gave life to that image. I no longer felt the truth of his rule. I imagined something different, something freer, and I did so with conviction. That was the prophecy, not a warning, not a threat, but a quiet statement in consciousness. This shall no longer be. I saw a world without him. I felt its reality, breathed its air, and then the outer world, slow but obedient, began to mirror the vision. It always begins there, before words are spoken, before actions are taken, in that intimate and sacred theatre within. Imagination does not wait for permission. It declares, and what it declares, if felt as true, must be made visible. The power that was lost was never theirs. It appeared to be for a time. It wore the garments of authority, titles, wealth, applause, control. But beneath the surface of all outward power is something far more silent, far more enduring, and far more real. Man, in his sleep, mistakes position for power, fear for influence, domination for strength. Yet these are only shadows, reflections dancing on the wall of consciousness. They borrow their life from something deeper, the divine I Am, the awareness that sustains all form and gives breath to all appearance. What man calls power is, in truth, a projection, a mask placed on the face of consciousness by collective belief. We agree, often without question, that certain figures possess control, that certain structures are fixed, that certain roles carry inherent force. But power, in its truest essence, cannot be inherited, bestowed, or stolen. It is not something one can take from another. It is asterisk recognized asterisk, or it is not. The moment we cease to recognize it, it dissolves. I once gave my attention, my reverence, even my fear, to such a figure. To the world he appeared unshakable, but I now know he only stood because I believed him to stand. I thought his power was his. I thought he had earned it, or seized it, or been granted it by something beyond me. But in that quiet moment of revelation, it became clear. His power was not his. It was mine, reflected back to me. My belief in his dominance, my unconscious agreement with the illusion, my own creative force misdirected outward and misunderstood, when the I Am within me began to stir, when I became aware of myself not as a personality, but as presence, something shifted. I could feel the foundation of the illusion weakening. The one who had stood tall in the image of authority now appeared smaller, less substantial, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Nothing had changed in the outer world yet. But everything had changed within me, and that is where real change begins. You cannot lose what you never truly possessed, and he never truly possessed power. He only wore the appearance of it because I, and others like me, allowed it. We lent him our awareness, and from that awareness his shadow grew tall. But when the awareness returned to its source, to the divine I Am within, his illusion began to fade. He had not fallen from power. He had simply been seen clearly, and that clarity stripped away the illusion. True authority belongs only to the one who knows the self as eternal, boundless being, not to the figure in a suit or the voice behind a podium, not to the one who commands crowds, but to the one who commands their own inner world. Power that depends on recognition is not power, it is performance, and performance must always end. The divine I Am is not a performance. It is the source, and it is in that source that real authority lives. This removal was not about politics. It had nothing to do with party lines, public approval, elections, or policy. It was not the result of speeches, protests, or media campaigns. The shift I witnessed was far deeper and far more consequential than anything the surface of the world could explain. It was a movement in consciousness, a turning inward, a recentering of power, a quiet and profound withdrawal of belief from a false source. That is where the real change occurred, not in governments or structures, but in the silent theater of awareness where all power is first granted or denied. What appeared to be a fall, a loss, or an exit in the world was in fact the aftershock of a decision made within the soul. It was the collapse of an illusion that had been upheld, often without question, by my own sustained attention. I had made him central, not out of admiration, but out of belief that he held some measure of control over life. I had allowed a figure, an office, a name, to become a fixed point in my inner world, and by doing so I gave my power away, not in action, but in imagination. But then came the shift. It was not loud, but it was total. I no longer saw him as a center. I no longer invested him with meaning. I no longer believed in his symbolic position. And in that moment he began to diminish, not in stature, but in significance. His image no longer held weight in my thoughts. My attention turned inward, and the outward symbol, no longer supported by belief, began to fade. This was not rebellion, it was realization, not a movement of the masses, but a movement of one, the self returning to its true source. Politics, at its core, is a projection of the collective state of consciousness. It reflects the fears, desires, and assumptions of the people. But when an individual awakens, truly awakens, to their creative role in shaping reality, the grip of political idols begins to loosen. They no longer serve as gods or monsters. They become mirrors, and once the reflection no longer matches the image within, the mirror cracks. This is what I saw, a cracking of the mirror, a quiet collapse of importance. Not because the world had rejected him, but because I no longer affirmed him. The power he once appeared to wield was a role I had cast him in, unconsciously, and when I rewrote the script in the silence of my imagination, the character lost his lines. There was no anger in it, no battle, just clarity, just the realization that no one holds power over me unless I give it to them in consciousness. When I removed my belief, my emotional investment, my inner attention from him, it was as if the spotlight turned off. He remained on stage, but the light was gone. The scene had ended. This is not the kind of change the world measures in votes or laws. It is deeper, it is invisible, and yet it shapes all visible things. The removal I witnessed was not political, it was spiritual. It was the soul reclaiming its authority, withdrawing energy from a false center, and returning power to its rightful place, within. Your world reflects your inner assumptions. It cannot do otherwise. It is not reacting to you. It is echoing you. What you hold to be true within, what you assume quietly and persistently in the unseen corridors of your mind, is precisely what shows up in the visible structure of your life. This is not metaphor, it is law, and once you see it, truly see it, the illusion of outside causation begins to fall apart. The person who was removed from power, the figure so many revered or feared, was never truly autonomous. He symbolized something. He stood as a reflection, not of who he was in himself, but of what I once accepted as real in my own consciousness. He represented an idea I carried, perhaps unknowingly, about authority, control, separation, and helplessness. He was a projection of an old internal narrative, that there were forces outside of me that ruled my life, that power existed elsewhere, and that I had to conform to survive. But assumptions, like costumes, can be taken off. They are not permanent, they are habits of thought, and like all habits, they can be changed. What happened when he lost his place in the world was the outward echo of a quiet decision made within me. I no longer agreed with that old idea. I no longer gave energy to it. I no longer saw myself as beneath anything or anyone, and the moment I ceased to entertain that assumption, the image built from it began to dissolve. It did not happen through effort or external persuasion. It happened through clarity. I realized that I had been feeding a version of the world with my inner focus. I had been sustaining a narrative that no longer served me, and when I finally released it, when I let go of the belief that someone else held the reins of my reality, the reflection changed. This is how the world works. It is not personal. It is precise. When you assume something with feeling, when you give it your inner agreement and dwell on it with emotional energy, it becomes form. It becomes fact. And when you withdraw that energy, when the assumption no longer lives in you, the form must fade. It may take time to fall, but the foundation has already crumbled. That is what happened with this figure. His fall was not the cause, it was the effect. The cause was internal, invisible, intimate. It was the shift in consciousness that no longer required him to exist in the role I had assigned him. The structure I had upheld with belief collapsed because I stopped supporting it. It was not that he changed, it was that I did, and so the world, faithful servant that it is, reflected that change, not because I demanded it, but because I no longer denied my own power. The outer symbol was removed because the inner assumption had already left. And without the assumption, there is no projection. Without the belief, there is no need for the symbol. The mirror cannot reflect what you no longer hold before it. No one to change but self. It sounds simple, almost too simple, as if the whole complex drama of life could be reduced to one quiet instruction. And yet, in that simplicity lies a profound and liberating truth. The world is not something to be wrestled with, nor are people obstacles to be overcome or enemies to be defeated. There is only self, and the self, rightly understood, is not the personality, the name, or the history, but the awareness behind all of that. When that awareness changes, everything changes with it. There was a time when I believed that change had to happen out there, that people needed to be convinced, that systems needed to be dismantled, that power needed to be challenged by force. But all of that effort left me exhausted and circling the same patterns. Then came the inner shift, not a lightning bolt, but a dawning realization. The person I believed was in control, the system I thought held sway, the structure I imagined as immovable, none of it existed independently of me. It was all reflection, and the mirror only ever shows what is held before it. When I changed within, the mirror cracked, not violently, but naturally. What no longer belonged to the image I carried in my consciousness began to fall away. It had to. The outer world, so firm and factual to the senses, is not the cause of anything. It is the outpicturing of belief, the shadow cast by inward light, and when the source of the light shifts, the shadow must follow. The one I saw fall from power was never the point. He was the echo. He stood because something in me had stood for him. An assumption, a fear, a story. I had unknowingly supported him with belief, with attention, with the emotional charge of seeing him as the center. But when that support vanished, when I no longer recognized his image as valid or true, the structure began to shake. It had nothing left to stand on, because I had removed my agreement. No one else had to change. Not the people, not the politics, not the position, only me. I didn't protest outwardly. I didn't fight. I revised inwardly. I shifted from feeling subject to external authority to realizing the real authority was my awareness. I stopped waiting for change and became the change in the only place where it truly matters, in consciousness. What fell away outside was simply the echo of that inner transformation. The outer world reassembled itself to reflect my new alignment. The removal of the figure from power was not something I caused in the traditional sense. It was something I allowed by no longer needing the symbol that person had come to represent. He had served his purpose in my story. He had shown me what I was still giving away, and once I reclaimed it, his image dissolved like mist. There is no one to change but self, and when the self is changed, when you see clearly, feel differently, believe anew, the world has no choice but to catch up. You are the operant power. This is not a metaphor or a spiritual suggestion. It is a fact of consciousness. There is no external force orchestrating your world apart from what you accept as true within yourself. You are not a passive observer. You are the cause. Everything you see around you, the structures, relationships, patterns, even the seeming randomness of events, exists as an extension of the assumptions you carry in your awareness. The vision I was shown, the vivid image of power being removed, was not a threat or a prediction. It was an invitation. It was there to awaken, not to warn, to remind me and to remind you that power is not out there. It is in here. It always has been. In the vision, there was no anger, no chaos. Only the unmistakable sense that something long sustained by belief was no longer required, and in that absence of belief, it crumbled. It didn't fall because someone attacked it. It fell because it was no longer supported in the inner world. That is where all structures draw their strength, from the silent agreement of consciousness. And when you withdraw that agreement, not in defiance, but in clarity, the illusion begins to dissolve. This is the truth that the world resists, because it empowers the individual to a level that feels almost unreasonable. We are taught to believe we are small, that we must defer to larger systems, that our inner life is private and has no real consequence. But the exact opposite is true. Your inner life is the source. The thoughts you accept, the images you dwell on, the feelings you inhabit, these are the seeds from which the world around you grows. The outer is not the origin, it is the echo. When I saw the removal of the figure from power, I understood. It was not just about him. It was about the false idea he represented, the illusion that anyone or anything outside of myself had authority over me. That belief had lived inside me quietly, deeply embedded through culture and repetition. But once exposed, it no longer held weight. The vision didn't terrify me. It empowered me, because I recognized that I had played a role in upholding the illusion, and now I could stop. You can, too. You can withdraw belief from what no longer serves you. You can question the images you've accepted as fixed. You can stop worshiping at the altar of limitation and realize that the only true power is the I am within you, the self, aware presence that imagines, feels, and believes. That is the operant power. It does not wait for permission. It does not ask the world what is possible. It declares, and the world obeys in time. There is no hierarchy of influence. No one is closer to the divine than you. No one holds more creative authority in your world than you do. Once that is seen, not just intellectually but experientially, the world begins to shift, not because you begged it to, but because you finally stopped believing in things that were never real to begin with. Conclusion. The vision I received was not a political prophecy, nor a call to external action. It was a profound awakening to the truth that all power originates within. The figure removed from power was not the cause of change. but the effect of an inner transformation, a reflection of a belief I no longer carried. There is no one to change but self. When the self is changed, the world must follow, for it has no choice but to mirror what we assume and accept in consciousness. This entire experience revealed a single, unshakable truth. Asterisk, asterisk, you are the operant power. Asterisk, asterisk, the divine I am. Within you is the only true source of authority. What you consent to inwardly becomes the reality you live outwardly. When belief is withdrawn, illusions fall. When attention is reclaimed, false centers collapse. The world, its people, its structures, its events, will always reflect the state of your inner being. So if something in your world appears immovable, ask not how to change asterisk it asterisk. Ask instead what in asterisk you asterisk sustains it. And then, in stillness and conviction, revise your assumption. See with the inner eye. Feel with the inner heart. Know that imagination, clothed in feeling, creates reality. The one you saw with power never truly held it. You did, and now you remember.